Hey, welcome to Fish Innovation. We have another great guest on today. When we talk about a lot about products and strategies to help folks in small businesses and startups grow and scale, there's several key players that help you do that. Not just the folks on your team, but those that externally who are subject matter experts in their own fields and can help you rise to the occasion and really dominate the competition. I'm clearly talking about coaches here, and we have a great coach on today. His name's Adam Barney. He's in Boston, Massachusetts, and he has an amazing look into a specific type of coaching that I'd love for you all to hear and see. Adam, welcome to the show. Glad you could be here.
Thank you so much, Ben. Great to be here and joining you on Fish Innovation today.
Yeah, this is really exciting. I can't wait to hear what you're going to plan to talk about. But first, I really would like for the audience to hear about your journey into coaching, how you got there, what really shaped you as the Adam we hear about today.
Well, I appreciate that, Ben. Just to give listeners a little bit more background on where I come in from a coaching standpoint, I'm an energy coach. I wish I could say that's about mystical stones and sorcery, but really it's about how over the past few years, I've worked with hundreds of both emerging and executive leaders to keep them energized and accountable. For anyone who's ever felt like they've been running on fumes, trying to do everything, but somehow it still never feels like it's enough. That's my background. That's where I come from, in a 20-year nonlinear corporate background ahead of launching this business. And then I cracked this code on energy management. So again, today I really help leaders and change makers stay energized, make forward progress, and create what I like to call sustainable success without falling into the pits of burnout and things like that.
That's awesome. Tell me about energy coaching. I mean, you just wake up one morning and you're like, man, I'm always full of energy. I think everybody needs to be energized when they're doing this because here's the benefits. Or was it, this is a niche? We look at different kinds of coaching and folks aren't focused in on energy coaching. So talk to us about what is energy coaching and then how you decided to harness that power.
Yeah, I wish I could say so. So really, what it ties back to is the fact that we all have these natural energy boosts and energy drainers, and we each have a unique pattern of energy during the day. So that's where energy coaching comes in. I'm someone though who, as a coach, I've always loved being almost a cheerleader in people's back pocket or keeping their battery charged. That's where I come in. But even myself as an energy coach, I deal with those nuances of the energy boosts and the drains that come out throughout the day. That's the background. I love to keep people, it's about refilling their battery, right? Basically is what it comes down to. I think no matter how your energy boosts and drains, you hear about a lot of entrepreneurs, of course, Ben, who get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and that's when they find their zone where they can focus and get clarity and drive to success. I'm different than that. I don't get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I live in a house with two dogs who, when I get out of bed, no matter what time, they think it's time to have breakfast, and two young kids. So I'll wake the whole house up if I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I think that's a really interesting distinction that just digs into how we each have these energy peaks and valleys that we come across. And my focus time, for instance, is from 9 o'clock at night to 11 or 11:30 in the dark. And that's when I've realized all of the noise of the day slips away, and that's when I can focus. But that's what energy is about. It's about figuring out what are the things that energize you. For instance, for myself, and it's not just about me, of course, but I think it's an interesting idea of how I got to this. Music is one of those things that really drives me. So when I put that song that pumps me up or that playlist that really gets my energy flowing, that can help take me from a low energy period in my own day to boosting my energy and moving forward. And I think, one of the things that doesn't happen in a lot of coaching and that I bring to the table also in my practice is the fact I'm not just going to have a conversation with you for 40 minutes or 60 minutes and then walk away. I'm going to be that battery pack in your back pocket who's keeping you asynchronously accountable and energized towards the goals that we're laying out there. And it's really about energy as much as it's about success from a business standpoint. It's about that holistic nature of what drives us as humans.
That's really interesting. So, do you think when you're looking to driving energy, do you look at it more on the personal side, or do you look at it more of like driving energy into the business, right? So it's not just,
It starts with personal, Ben, but it bleeds into everything that we do, right? It's this nature that this energy can come and work. I actually use in my coaching practice a platform that's called positive intelligence. And this is a tool that comes in and it works on operating system neural remapping that bleeds across the full nature of us as a human, right? So it's this idea that we all, going back to the primal human brain, have this fight or flight mentality that drives us into these self-saboteurs in the modern age. And when we lean too heavily into them, they can lead us on a downward cycle. And if we identify what those are, those extend across both business as well as the personal realm. It's the holistic, again, human nature that we all are. It can allow you to work on strategies to downplay how those saboteurs impact you and enable a sage way of thinking. And it's a really transformative vision to use in the midst of energy coaching because it allows you to use, for instance, as an entrepreneur or anyone who's building a business, you take your failures and you learn from them. And it's about your resilience. It's not just about acting, it's about the resilience of staying on that path to iterating and learning and working towards whatever that success point, your next success point looks to be.
yeah, I love that. You're not the only person who's mentioned resiliency for founders to focus. I had another guest on a completely different profession and mentioned that it is one of the pillars into being successful in that industry is being resilient. It's going to be tough. You're going to get knocked down. People are going to say no. Things aren't going to work out, but you're going to have to just figure, how do I push through and solve for it? Or if I don't solve for it, how I'm going to handle it and make those decisions. And so I think you're right. It's being able to maintain or manage that so your emotional energy, I guess, is in tune with your thought process and being able to get you where you need to be. That's awesome. So your clients that you help, are a lot of them CEOs, or are they or C-suite, or is it folks in all industries, all areas? Where is sort of your sweet spot of folks that would really benefit from your help?
Yeah, I love to work with anyone who's basically looking for that energy guide, really, but more acutely to answer that question. It's about working with founders, CEOs, executives who come from high pressure industries, whether it's tech, whether it's finance, or people, I'm deeply wound also, Ben, into trying to enable greater justice and equity in the world. So I love to work with people who are either looking to build a company that's making the world a better, more just, equitable place, or who are developing some of the highly necessary climate solutions that we need in the world and that we need more of. I also love working with leaders. I mentioned this in my introduction, emerging leaders. I think that that's such a transformative place to play. I'm 42. I have 2 young kids and 2 dogs in the house. I live in a state of controlled chaos here in Boston. But it's about influencing that next generation of leaders to take an idea, no matter background or experience, and act on it. And going back to resiliency, that's the differentiator in terms of leaders and taking ideas that actually can change the world and make it a better place. You can hit roadblocks and bumps in the road, you can get torn down, and you can fail beautifully. But if you stay resilient in the center of the vision of what drives you and you continue to work in the systems that drive into that vision, that the goals fit within, that path eventually, as much as it feels stagnant, should rise up to a successful level. It's about that resiliency. And that's where, as a coach, especially with those emerging leaders or even executive leaders, it's coming in and being that partner who can keep them, again, energized and accountable and keep that clarity of vision. I'm someone who I've always thought in my own 20-year nonlinear corporate marketing career, where I worked everywhere from venture capital backed startups to enterprise scale global companies, one of the things that I realized that I think might be fun to talk about here is that there's no formalized leadership training that generally happens across people who step in at a junior level as an independent contributor and eventually raise the ranks of success to be a manager. And I saw it time and time again in my career. I talk a lot about this actually in my book that was published last year, Make Your Own Glass Half Full, The Empowered Path to Optimism and Autonomy. The fact that so many leaders that I experienced worked on a downward negative cycle, and that didn't allow us as a team or us as an organization to grow. That kept us guardrailed and pulled us back down. It killed the energy in the organization, whereas those leaders that looked up in the world, and for instance, looking at a team and hiring a team, it was about people who you need to have succeed in your role that you hire them for. But I always had the perspective, I want to help my employees get to the next job and then the job after that. It's about how they level up in the world. That upward level of thinking isn't something that exists. And I think we could use more of that, honestly, in terms of the leaders we have within the world today.
Yeah, I I agree. I love that you're playing in that space where not a lot of people have thought. There's a lot of, oh, I'm an executive coach. I'm an executive coach. There's not I'm an up and coming executive coach, right? So you're able to help people who, within their own organization, that's all they may have ever seen. And so they're just adhering to that culture, and they're trying to, so you end up just sort of replicating the same kind of leader that's there. And you end up not being able to help the entire company move forward. So I love that you're working with those people. And the fact too is when those folks bring energy into the room, it really changes the mentality of the group think. I've seen it before in my own corporate career is if you're able to sort of bring that energy and push people through and get there, you get a lot better outcomes than just sort of saying, okay, here's the agenda, this is what we're going to do. And especially if you're the leader in front and you're sort of just going through the motions, you're not going to get much out of the folks in the room. So that's awesome you're doing that.
It's really one of those fun things that when you change the dynamic of the energy in a room as a leader, or even as someone. I, for instance, recently just went through a Harvard Business School program it was about power and influence for positive impact. And it's really interesting when you think about how energy plays into the power dynamics on teams, no matter where you sit in an organization, or if you're in the halfway around the world trying to build a business that helps to influence your local community. That power dynamic is something that we think about. And again, the leaders that work towards an up solution and work towards the top of the mountaintop, that's a different way to view than just being focused on revenue. Living in this world of the capitalist society that we at least live in here in the United States.
100%.
It's also been really transformative, Ben. I've had the opportunity over the last 2 years to work with over 200 what I call micro businesses here in the US. And these are businesses that they're recipients of a Comcast Rise grant program, which is a fantastic opportunity for them to scale up their business. They brought coaching into this mix because when you've got, small business, I would love to change the policy taxonomy around small business versus micro business. I think small businesses go up to 500 employees. That underserves those businesses that are 1 to 15 or maybe 1 to 50 employees. So I've been working with a lot of these micro businesses again over the last 2 years, and these can be everywhere from the local handmade pasta shop around the corner that's opening up to a dog walking business. They really run the gamut. And it's incredible to step in as a coach, and it's influenced working with executives and those emerging leaders and from my own mindset, because those micro business owners are facing the same challenges. And even if you're a solo employee with a very small mom and pop local business, you have 3 million things going on in your head about your business that's no different than someone who's, building a tech unicorn, in the world, right? They're all focused. And I love to remind my coaching clients also, there aren't many things in this world that level set every single human on this planet. But one of them is that we all only have 24 hours within the day to use. And it's all about how we use that time. That ties so back to the energy that we bring to the forefront, because we can't make more time necessarily, until we can clone ourselves with AI, right? And that's an opportunity that's out there in the world these days. We can only get as much as we can get done within our 24 hours a day. So if we can use that time and use that energy more effectively, that's a win. And that's where I've built this tool called the Energy Blueprint that really dives into the transformative nature of my coaching, where I help leaders double energy and boost productivity by upwards of 20 or 30%. That's a huge piece of it. And there are three, it's about an energy audit. How do you track your energy highs and lows to optimize your schedule? How do you use things like a power pause, a 5-minute reset to regain focus and clarity, maybe when your energy is lower or you need to dig in? And then how do you use tools like movement stacking, right? Incorporating micro movement to sustain that mental clarity. It's one of those really valuable tools that opens up some quick wins in this realm of how to use your energy more effectively.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think there's a lot of people out there that they struggle with whether, they might think it's an organizational issue. Like, I'm never organized, but maybe they are. It's just that they just haven't calibrated their energy correctly, which is great to have them maybe work with you to go through all of that so they can maybe understand where those gaps are or how they can reset themselves to get where it is. They might say, for example, 6 to 7 p.m. is my zone, right? But you might say, well, actually, it's not. I don't know if you saw this, but based on what it is, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. or 8 to 10 a.m. is where you need to be. So look what you've got at that time, right? This is what it is. And so it might be sort of like an aha moment for that client that's able to see that.
It's one of those realms also where rarely do we, I believe in this idea of a fully optimized human, right? And a fully optimized human has a therapist who helps to resolve things that happened in the past, right? So that works towards the past. A mentor who works in your realm of what you do on a day-to-day job and keeps you abreast of industry changes and motivated there. And then a coach helps you move to the future, right? So those are three distinct things. 99% of humans on the planet cannot have those three things concurrently. That's a very difficult from a time management, from a money perspective, but that fully optimized human is really valuable to look at. And that coach working towards the future is such a dynamic place to play in. The other part that I bring into my coaching that I think is interesting to talk about here for listeners, I love to get into origin stories with my clients before we start to unlock a lot of what this vision looks like, because each of us has a unique set of experiences and a unique background that has led us to where we are today. It doesn't necessarily dictate in a linear fashion where we go in the future, but that background and that origin is so innately valuable because that gets into even going back to your childhood, what drove you to where you are today, whether it's family dynamics, friends you grew up with, where you went to school. All of those things play into the tangled web of the path to today. And then imagine in the future, there are tangled tentacles in different directions that go off that we can all work towards. So having an accountability and an energy partner in your back pocket who can start to keep you and guide you towards the vision of where that tentacle winding path goes, that's a game changer in terms of the effectiveness of where you can go in the future.
That's great. I like your word choice on your origin story. You're kind of building a superhero here when you're working with them. And I'm kind of interested in hearing sort of, once you've heard that origin story and you're helping them, do you see that energy might not be one size fits all, right? You've got the mechanics and the operational components to help these folks, but of course, everyone's different. And Maybe you have an example of a client that you've had before that might have been really hard to overcome, and maybe how did you do it? Or maybe the opposite, which is, oh, I don't, this person seems full of energy, and then you find out, oh, maybe it's misplaced. So I'm interested in hearing a story behind that.
So I've got a couple there that come to mind. Again, I spent 20 years in a nonlinear corporate marketing career, but I spent about 10 years of that working in the big agency world. I worked for an agency called Digitas, part of the French-owned holding company, the Publicis Group. Worked with Fortune 50 clients, for instance, working with Bank of America through the 2008 financial crisis. Really interesting client to have in your portfolio. I always loved, though, being challenged by the most difficult client who it felt like you had to actually put that time investment with to build a partnership, not just a relationship. Some of those clients in those days took months upon months to get to that really solid working relationship from a client agency relationship. That was so much more satisfying than the easy clients who step in and ultimately just don't challenge you to that same level. That transcends, though, into my coaching practice. I love those challenging clients where it takes that time and that investment in understanding their origin to really start to peel back the onion on what drives them. Like onions have so many different layers. How do you start to scrape those different away to get to the center? I continue to love being challenged by that. And there's a client that I've been working with for about a year now who we have seen probably 3 phases through our coaching up to date of how the conversation and the challenges have changed. And we understand each other better now. Sometimes coaching bleeds into a bit of a therapy realm as well, right? Which I will
Yeah.
admit. But because we're so focused on what drives you at your core, and I love to use tools like Ikigai, the Japanese concept for a reason for being that ties together what you're good at, what you love, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for. And then I like to pair that with an Odyssey plan that looks 5 to 10 years in the future and lays out 3 options. The first one is everything stays consistent. The second option is what's the alternative if that first option goes away. And then the third is no constraints, no limitation. And both that Ikigai and that Odyssey plan work. They're not direct roadmaps for where you go in the future, but they provide those themes that align how I help to optimize your energy and keep you accountable towards that shift and that change. They're tools, though, that open up your ability to think. And I've even seen with Ikigai, both that Ikigai and Odyssey plan are tools that you can't fill out in 5 minutes. They should take a week or a little bit longer, and they should be living things that evolve because as humans, we do change over time. But you can go back to them and use them as a resource. And that helps me understand what drives my clients that I work with at a deeper level. And then if we're working on things that are going away from that center of what's driving them, I'm there as an accountability partner to guide them back to the center of that path and stay energized and accountable. I love to remind clients who are in a transition period, right? Going from one job to level up to a different job or changing from one industry to a climate role. I love to work with them and keep them accountable to actually staying to the center of that vision. That challenge, though, that challenge can be really hard, but that's what excites me. And I think it actually, I'm someone who, personally, even growing up as a kid, I was never driven by outside competition. I was so innately driven by my own self-efficacy and self-determination more than anything else. I love to, in my energy coaching, dig into that with my coaching clients, right? How do they develop that self-drive, that self-determination inside of themselves? And that's what they stay honest to in our work together.
That's great to hear. A lot of the things that you mentioned, a lot of the terminology, a lot of the practices to do, is a lot of this in your book?
A lot of it is in the book. The book ties into my own personal experiences. In my corporate career, I was laid off twice, right? I pulled up my bootstraps and got out of that. Again, the book is called Make Your Own Glass Half Full, The Empowered Path to Optimism and Autonomy. Those are the two tools that led me through those professional challenges. And I also lost my mom just over 10 years ago to ALS, which was obviously a transformative and difficult experience to go through. But in my mind, it opened up this door to get involved with some really fantastic research projects from a familial study standpoint that have allowed me to, not just mourn the loss of my mom, but actually get involved with trying to change the science and figure out where the solutions might be. And I'm saying that's my journey, but I also pull in stories that go back through hundreds, if not thousands of years around the world of leaders who've used optimism and autonomy to step up. Everyone from say Sarah Blakely, who started Spanx, to some of the early kingdoms in Africa. There are leaders who have stepped up and used those tools to change the trajectory and change the world. I think if we can use more of those, then that's great. It also pulls in positive psychology. I dug pretty deeply into work from people like Martin Seligman, who's the father of positive psychology, to get into why those two tools are so effective. I will say, though, Ben, my favorite chapter in the book is a chapter about the allure of darkness. Darkness can be such a sexy, alluring thing that can pull us in. But those tools of optimism and autonomy can allow us to level up back to, even if it's a cloudy day, the sun is still behind the clouds mentality.
Yeah, that's great. How can people get your book? For those that can't access you right now or are still thinking about having a coach, where can they find your book?
Yeah. They can find it on Amazon. It's available globally. I self-narrated the audiobook, which launched just about a month ago. So that's a fun way to actually hear my voice go through it. But, I'd also, it's up on Amazon. You can visit I have a website, makeyourown.glasshalffull.com as well. And you also can find it on my own website, which is adamwbarney.com.
So you've taught us a lot here in terms of the different places of where you're at in your career, when you might need a coach, why an energy coach is important. For those that might still be thinking, I never really thought about having a coach, or maybe I did, but I didn't see it as something of great importance. What would you say to those folks that they might feel, what, it's time to make a change, or it's time for me to get Adam as my coach?
Yeah, I love that challenge, right? It's about understanding where you are today, but where you want to go in the future. And if you've got that open-minded nature to actually learn, improve, grow, and work towards that center rather than just the stereotypical traditional path that we all think is the right direction to head, that's where I'd love to have a conversation.
So I know we're running short on time, but I'm interested, is there anything that we haven't discussed today that you really want folks to know or walk away with?
I mean, if you're ready to stop running on empty and start thriving with more energy, clarity, and impact, check out my coaching practice, check out my book. Obviously, if you're looking for a free starting point, I'll happily link back to the energy blueprint that I mentioned before. But let's make your glass more than half full, and let's plug in and go.
I love that. I think it would be really beneficial for people to check out that blueprint and sort of kind of see and maybe even test the waters to see how it can really enhance their life, their well-being, and their work and purpose.
Ben, that's my goal with it. That's my mission. That's my goal.
Well, I'm glad you could join us today. Very insightful. Again, coaching, personally, I view it as a way to enhance everything you're doing. You talk about it as the optimizing a human. I love using that word. Usually we think about it as work, but applying it to ourselves. Agreed. And it doesn't sound that you're saying, hey, I'm going to completely tear you down and build you up. It's more about working within the guardrails and confines of what's there today, but bringing out that energy that either might have been stored or not building in your body and in your mind. So I thank you once again for coming on the show, and everything you mentioned we'll put in the links. It'll be there for folks to find. And to everybody else, try to get that energy up even if you don't have a chance to connect with Adam. And besides that, keep on innovating.
Boom. Thank you.